Welcome to the Alien Nation TV series. It opens very similarly to the movie with a news report. In fact, it uses most of the same clips, like the slave ship, which always reminds me of the mothership in V, by the way, and then various shots of newcomers hanging around the streets at night. I think all of which were taken from the movie. You can tell because the newcomers looked different in the movie than in the series. Basically, in the movie, the makeup covered their faces as well, and they did things like build up noses into slightly unusual shapes, and in the case of George, made his face look rounder than Mandy Patinkin's. In the series, you'll see that the actors' faces are left uncovered. I always loved that Rambo 6 on the marquee. You can tell that this was made just after the 80s when movie sequels were a thing that people thought would never end. So anytime a movie was mentioned in a futuristic setting, it was always something like Nightmare on Elm Street 14 or whatever as sort of a joke, or maybe just a commentary on the state of movies at the time.
Friday the 13th, part 1649?
It's just one of those outdated things that amuses me, if only because I know people saw that and thought, yeah, there probably will be a Rambo 6 by 1995. Speaking of which, the other purpose for the Rambo 6 marquee is to show that this series takes place basically only about 6 years in the future of when it was made. Considering the news broadcast says that the footage of the ship was from 5 years ago, I think the general idea is, if some humanoid aliens landed here tomorrow, what would society look like in a few years?
Damn, I hate them slags. You believe it? They're trying to give them the right to vote.
Yeah, they even invented a slur for Tanktonese people, slag. Though I realize that in the UK that's more of a general insult. We don't really use it in the US, though. So this homeless guy has slime on him and something is wrong with his face. And just when that's discovered...
Mr. Lincoln?
A newcomer Catholic priest? How does that work? He would have to have been fresh off the boat, as it were, when he started studying for that. Maybe newcomers being fast learners factors into it, taking less time? But I digress.
We were worried about you at the mission. You missed several meals and we were wondering...
Suddenly this guy seems to be surrounded by newcomers and is deathly afraid of them. The priest chases him up several flights of stairs where he ties a hanging cord around his neck and jumps through a window in one of the most dramatic self-hangings I've ever seen. Talk about going out with a bang. Cut to George's family moving into their new house in a nice suburban neighborhood where George's wife, Susan, who is now played by Michelle Scarabelli,
I'm Diane Cooper, the yellow house over there.
Oh, Susan Francisco, hi.
gets a welcome from a well-intentioned neighbor who is accidentally a little bit racist. Look at how she looks at Emily.
Wow, you sure look like your mom. Oh, well, I mean...
Not that all newcomers look alike. Some of my best friends are newcomers.
Look, I know you're busy. My phone number's on the card there if I can help.
She is really nice, though, just awkward. I think this is a great example of how racism can be unintentional and come from a well-meaning person.
Any signs of life from that son of ours?
Back, off and on.
So here's a change from the movie. George originally had a young son named Richard. Here he has a teenage son named Buck and a young daughter named Emily. Emily is nervous about her first day at school, and Buck is a punk.
English, please, Buck?
Here's another fun thing about this show, learning newcomers' original names, which always have an interesting ring to them. Buck's original name was Phoenixa. Also, newcomers have a name for humans, Turt, whatever that means. Probably a derivative of some Tanktonese word.
After all your father and I paid for this house and all we put into it.
What's wrong?
Our property's not gonna be worth half what we paid for it.
Yeah, the property value, that's why you don't want them as neighbors. That was a common excuse for why white people didn't want black people in their neighborhood. Hell, it was Archie Bunker's complaint when the Jeffersons moved in.
How much you think our property's gonna be worth with them living 2 doors away?
Meanwhile, the daughter only seems curious about Emily. Cut to Matt looking at Tuggs's tombstone. They actually added an S to the end of his last name. Originally it was Tuggle, which sounds a bit better to me, but whatever.
Can't believe you've been gone a month already, Tuggs.
This is the first clue that the show probably takes place after the movie, but I'll go more into that later.
At least I nailed the slag who got you, huh?
Now they got me working with the slag.
See, but that line implies that Matt didn't choose to work with George. Speak of the devil, George approaches Matt with a little gift.
Bread muffin. A little prune juice. Wait, you mentioned yesterday.
What are you, a proctologist? Why don't you just be a good little slag and mind your own business, okay?
Oof, well, some character development got lost there. And this is where George gently lets Matt know that slag is a slur, comparing it to the N-word and the K-word, which he does say, but I'm talking over it because I don't want this video demonetized. And then this exchange happens.
I thought all you guys were supposed to be whiz kids.
But all you guys had rhythm.
Ooh, burn. Go random newcomer cop. Wait, is it bad that I laughed at that? Shit. Anyway, this newcomer's name is Albert. We're gonna learn a lot of interesting things about him later on, but for now he's just the dorky janitor.
Look at it! My kid had that made for me.
It's just a cup, dude. Your kid can get you another one. He acts like it's made of gold or something. Continuing the gag from the movie, here are some more funny newcomer names.
Thanks. Got a couple more disappearances in Slag Town. Mort, Dakota, Eleanor Roosevelt.
I like Mort Dakota. That one's cute. Officer Puente is kind of racist, too.
Oh, those guys are always knocking each other off down there. I say let them.
Just let all the newcomers kill each other? But she says it right in front of George, so maybe that means that she just means the ones in the dangerous part of town, which isn't much better, but still. So this leads Matt and George back to the dead homeless man.
Oh, I would have jumped too if I had all those zits. Suicide. Come on, let's get a donut.
Which Matt doesn't really care to follow up on for some reason.
What's the matter? That is a worried look. Sometimes it's hard to tell.
I just want to follow up on that vagrant's autopsy.
Whatever turns you on.
But they get interrupted when they hear on the radio that there's a disturbance at Emily's school.
Yes, I'm a purist, and I'm proud of it!
So the blonde lady from earlier who was complaining about property values, wink wink, turns out to be part of an anti-newcomer group called Purists. Fun fact, this actress was also in V, but she played a much nicer character. So anyway, the Purists are protesting this one little girl just wanting to go to school by standing in her way, not unlike what happened at the University of Alabama in 1963.
They breed like rabbits. Only 4 months instead of 9. Pretty soon there won't be any room for the rest of us.
Well, at least we learned a new fact about newcomers, short gestation period.
We should have let them into our schools. This has always been a good school. We gotta keep it that way.
There are some people on Emily's side, though.
She's got a right to go to school.
There are schools in Flagtown.
She doesn't live there anymore.
Let her move back. They're already taking too many jobs. Our jobs.
They took our jobs.
Matt and George arrive, and Matt's getting pretty pissed off.
I say we run back to Flagtown.
And then this happens.
Why stop with running them back to Slagtown? Why don't we just kill them? Teach them a lesson.
Matt is so amazing in this scene.
Keep them in their place. Keep America pure.
We don't even need to paint little stars on them to recognize them, do we?
Yeah, wait, what?
Look at them. They stand out even better than the Japs that we threw into concentration camps back in 1942. And enough of us get together, it'll almost seem legal, won't it?
The scary part is that even though he's clearly being sarcastic and mocking them, he's basically saying the quiet part out loud. This really is how bigots think.
Let's put little white pointy sheets on our heads and hang us a few slags, huh?
Having them all get quiet here is great for fiction. Clearly they're seeing the error in their ways, but I'm not so sure it'd go that way in real life. Oh, but Matt is just getting started.
Well, let's start with this little one right here. Just because she's an American citizen, that doesn't make her a human being, does it? So what if she's a little brighter than some of our kids? We can beat that out of her. So what if she might have come up with a cure for cancer someday? She's not civilized like us. So why don't we just put a gun to her head and end it all right here, huh?
Yeah, in real life, they'd probably all have their own guns and would have shot her already. I'm not being critical, just realistic. It is good fiction. Honestly, I think this is a fantastic scene, and I'm not kidding when I say it moves me to tears.
No, we don't want her dead. We just want her back where she belongs.
She belongs here.
And boy, I wish racism could be ended by someone making a rousing speech. This is a great character-defining moment for Matt, though. He's complicated.
Why don't you just be a good little slag and mind your own business, okay?
He has issues with newcomers due to what happened to his partner that he needs to work through. And hell, in the movie, he was kind of that way even before Tuggs got shot.
Slag Town, I hate this place. Look at that geek. Look at this crap.
I don't trust him, that's all.
But he believes in equal rights, and of course he's always going to be on the right side of the law.
Aren't you ashamed of yourselves? Huh?
aren't you?
Oof, that's uncomfortable. This actually does draw my attention to something interesting. There is never any overt racism shown against people of color in this show. I think the implication is that once the newcomers landed, it basically ended racism among humans because they all united in their desire to get rid of the new, bigger threat. Go humans?
Anybody gives this little one any trouble answers to me, got it?
So Emily gets to go to school.
You okay? Good girl. Now go in there and show him your stuff.
God, she's cute. I would die for that kid.
Party's over, people. Anybody still here in 3 minutes will be under arrest for the violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I'm starting my watch now.
Matt is like, oh crap, now George thinks I'm a good guy and I'll never get rid of him. Later, after all that happened, Susan is worried about Emily and is considering pulling her out of school. But Emily actually had a pretty good day despite the drama.
I like the school.
You do?
Yeah, it's nicer than the one I went to before. It's got bigger windows and more light, not like those trailers. And there's a computer right in the room.
Wow, a computer. Nah, it was 1989. I don't think any of my classrooms had more than one computer.
Hey, Buck.
Oh great, Buck's home.
How was it at your school, Buck?
Phoenix, hey, Pod?
I want you to use your English name now.
Hey, talk soon.
I love it when George gets all passive-aggressive.
How was your school?
It was okay.
Like father, like son. Meanwhile, Matt gets home, and it turns out he's got a new neighbor who he is kind of into until...
Bit to the left. Hi. I'm...
Rude. Would that count as Butterface? Maybe more like Butterhead.
A woman dropped this off, asked me to give it to you.
Thanks.
What the hell is wrong with you, Matt? I swear to God, he was raised by wolves or something.
Yeah.
Matt, it's Liddy. Did you get it?
Anyway, it turns out that Matt got a box of files from Tuggs's widow.
I found it buried in Tuggs's stuff. There was a note that said to give it to you if anything.
Also, after she dropped off the box, she got a weird feeling that someone had been in her house, meaning his apartment could be next.
Well, listen. Keep your door locked, huh? And, call me whenever you need to, okay?
At the police station the next day, they find out that the body of the homeless guy was taken from the morgue. Here's a cute scene where George is thanking Matt for what he did for Emily and...
More than that, it seemed like someone who really identified with her, somebody who knew what it was like to be an underdog.
Matt just can't get out of that elevator fast enough.
Oh, and Matthew.
Matt.
I don't think it's ever mentioned again, but George is the only character who addresses Matt as Matthew. I think after this point, Matt just gets used to it. Also, Matt wants to bet on a horse race, and George has some suggestions.
Horse. You're from another damn galaxy, and you're telling me how to play the ponies.
How am I supposed to take anybody seriously with a name like Amos and Andy?
Amos and Andy is another good name. Holy crap, this guy was also in V. He was Donovan's assistant, Tony.
Who else has access to this place?
It's not exactly Fort Knox around here.
Still carrying the body out would have attracted some attention.
I can see why they made you a detective.
So they go to talk to Albert, the newcomer janitor, whose name Matt doesn't even know. What a shock.
It means the English name they gave you in quarantine.
I already showed the clip in the intro video, but yes, his name is Albert Einstein.
Who took the body?
What body?
You know damn well what body. Now, who took it?
I didn't know any body was...
Don't!
Matt's pretty funny when he's frustrated.
But if you know something, it's very important that you tell me.
But George gets him to talk. Come to think of it, George is perpetually the good cop to Matt's bad cop.
Right. He didn't say anything about taking the body. He wanted me to leave the door unlocked so that he could take pictures of it.
Based on later material, I want to say that Albert isn't really dumb, just awkward, but that was pretty dumb what he did. Maybe he gets better later on. This show plays a bit fast and loose with continuity. Anyway, the person Albert unlocked the door for is a sleazy reporter for some local rag that was bothering them earlier. Meanwhile, Emily's at school and she's approached by some kids.
Hi, we're gonna play catch. You wanna play? Sure.
Yeah, that wasn't likely to end well.
Gotta stick to your own side of town, spongehead.
The girl who is the daughter of the blonde purist sneakily helps her out.
Just let it dry a little, then rub your hands together. It'll come right off.
Back to Matt and George. Matt gets the news that, of course, the horse he bet on lost. I love George's slow head turn there. There was kind of a similar scene in the movie.
A nice signal, dickhead!
George was less cool about it there. Probably because it was the first time. At this point, it's just another day with Matt.
You, picked many winners?
Only about 5 out of 7 yesterday.
But it turns out that George is really good at picking winners. I guess he just has a good head for math and statistics.
Oh, man, I don't get it. You know, here you are, bred to be slaves, and most of you got minds like...
Well, many of the slaves were required to do highly technical tasks in our culture. We weren't all miners or...
Yeah, okay. Who do you like in the sixth?
But Matt gets distracted by something by the side of the road, so he pulls over and doesn't say anything about what it's about at first.
Do we have a search warrant?
Yeah, I got your search warrant.
Oh, all right then.
Oh, George, why are you so trusting?
What?
It's very curious.
What is?
Nothing.
Tell me what is curious.
Tell me what we're doing here.
So this has to do with Tuggs' files. He had been doing research on slavery, and inside was a piece of paper with the address of that warehouse.
Whatever was important is gone, so... Well, this is Puente's beat. I'll check with her.
Okay.
George reveals what he was thinking a minute ago, and...
When I first came in here, there was a faint smell that reminded me of something. The atmosphere aboard our spacecraft.
All right, let's get back to work.
No wonder he didn't want to talk about it. So they go to see the reporter, Burns, who swears that he only took pictures of the body. He didn't take it.
It was one of the ugliest corpses I ever seen, man. It was beautiful.
So you took it?
But someone did knock him out from behind, so that's probably the culprit.
I don't know. I'm talking to some Mexican guy wearing a laundry jacket. He
Where
come
were
in
you
the back.
struck?
Right here, see?
And you didn't report it because you weren't supposed to be there anyway.
All right, come on, George, let's go.
Matt and George are led to a laundry truck, and as George is examining it, Matt wonders if he's good at picking winners at other sports.
How about football?
Oh, that's the game with the little pointy ball.
I love that. That's about how much I know about football.
So, how do you do it, picking football winners?
Only about 82%.
What?
Anyway, it turns out that the body was in that truck. Some of the slime came off.
So, George, who do you like for the Rams-Cowboys game?
Well, I'd have to do a little research.
So George has been trying to invite Matt for dinner, and Matt keeps blowing him off, but now George has got him.
Of course, I could tell you over dinner.
You can tell me tomorrow.
But the game is tonight.
So Matt comes home, the neighbor helps him with his groceries, but he stops her before she comes inside.
Don't move.
Tell me you're a cop. Are you gonna be really upset with me when I drop all of this on the floor? Thanks. Are all cops this careful when they come home?
So yeah, he knew there was a chance that someone would break into his apartment, so...
I'll just put this in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Poor nice neighbor lady finally gets a chance to introduce herself.
I'm Kathy Frankel.
Oh.
204.
Matt Sykes. Yeah, I know. In your language, Sykes means excrement and cranium.
Well, it could be worse.
This is actually referencing a conversation from the movie after Matt learns his partner's name is San Francisco.
We think your name's funny. It doesn't bother you, right?
That is exactly so. It is like your name, Sykes. I'm sure it doesn't bother you at all that to us it sounds just like Sykes. 2 words in my language which mean excrement and cranium. Shithead.
Thanks again for your help, huh?
Sure. Sure.
Kathy notices something on her way out.
Do you smoke cigars?
No, what do you...
Then somebody was here.
Oh, yeah, your seasoned professional always puffs away on a cigar when he searches an apartment.
Smokers get it in their clothes. They don't even realize it.
And you can smell it even after they're gone.
Yep. Not much hair, but I got a great nose.
Oh, I think he likes her. Speaking of the movie, there was another scene I didn't mention where a newcomer exotic dancer tries to seduce Matt, and it really freaks him out.
Oh, George, you handle the women from now on, all right? You know what I mean?
What do you mean?
I mean, you handle the women.
Later, Matt goes to the Francisco house.
I was on a stakeout watching for you.
Well, then you're a good cop.
I get why Emily is a newcomer. Nothing human can be that cute. So Susan thanks him and he asks how Emily is doing in school.
Not great, but at least you got her in the door.
No big deal.
Yes, it was.
I don't want you to go to any trouble for dinner. Why don't I just...
It's no trouble at all, really. George is out back right now, killing the beaver.
Good one, Susan. But yeah, newcomers can't handle cooked meat, and they do eat weird animals like otters and beavers. Not sure why they couldn't just eat raw beef or something. That's never really specified. By the way, I noticed that Susan calls George, well, George. There's never any indication that his name was formerly Sam.
How about football?
George, let's talk.
Look at Matt showing off for Emily. That's too cute, especially because he didn't want George to see it. Here's another fun fact about newcomers. They get drunk from sour milk. I love it when they pour it into a wine glass.
It's a good week.
It was first revealed in the movie where Matt had left a carton of milk out and forgotten about it because he's a slob. Then when George is there later, he asks if he can have it. Anyway, Matt admires a sculpture that it turns out was made by Susan.
What about Buck, Mama?
Buck is late, so they're starting without him. George does a Tengtonese prayer.
Milo. Usaka Tomilo.
While Matt just sits there and looks confused.
Soyebo, suk, akaka. Right on.
Salad, Matt?
He does ask about it afterwards, and Emily volunteers to tell him.
It's a remembrance of Andarko and Celine, a male and female who lived a long time ago and sacrificed themselves to save millions. We touch our fingers to each of our two hearts, then reverse them to show that the male and female are interchangeable. We touch our heads to bring their purity and goodness within us.
That's a nice religion. I tend to think of Andarko and Celine as their Adam and Eve. Then again, they're heroic figures, so I guess they really aren't like Adam and Eve. I guess it's more like if Jesus was two people. Buck waltzes in, and I'm sure this is going to go well.
English, please, Buck. We invited Matt over tonight because of how he stood up for Emily yesterday. And to also thank him for how kind he has been to me since we started working together.
Has he, though?
Be a good little slag.
Place aqui? Anna. Pa Chris.
Excuse me.
Ooh, Buck's gonna get a whooping.
Why don't you tell Matthew about your classes at SC?
Meanwhile, Susan does talk about her college classes.
You, studying sculpture at SC?
Yes, and English lit.
And astronomy and architecture.
Wow. I love how Buck is inadvertently playing slasher movie music when George opens the door. That's great.
To watch you suck up to him like that, Dad.
Okay, Buck doesn't actually get a whooping, yet. Though they do have a very uncomfortable conversation that I can imagine people of color have to have with their kids. Like a typical teenage boy, Buck is acting out because he's frustrated, but that frustration comes from the systemic racism he has to put up with. George tries to explain why he, quote, sucks up to turts, as Buck calls it.
We're different, Buck. It's written all over us. There's a natural resentment against us. So we have to be better, more patient, just to be accepted as even.
That's a lot of junk, Dad. We should be able to be who we are without the brown nosing.
George points out that they're in a better neighborhood and
where half the people don't even talk to us.
And that some newcomers are becoming very successful.
And how about Martine Bennett of the LA City Council?
Right, but does she get to vote?
If Proposition 16 passes, she will. We all will.
This is a very glass is half full or half empty kind of conversation.
Chance, a lot of humans want us to vote.
Yeah, well, I haven't met any of them.
Well, maybe you're not looking in the right places.
Buck turns down the offer for dinner, and George doesn't push. Meanwhile, some newcomer medics are examining the body of the homeless man.
Katwood cute.
Nanodwosk. Simka?
Whatever it is they find, they're very worried about it. Back to George and Susan. She asks about the smell George detected in the warehouse.
Was Matt impressed that you could smell things he couldn't?
More annoyed, I think. Spends a lot of time annoyed.
Yeah, that's Matt in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I saw her in the market today. She was amazed that I could smell and see the pesticides on the produce. Made me promise to pick out all her fruit from now on.
Sounds like she's getting along with the neighbor who brought her the flowers. That's awesome.
Of course, the produce manager wasn't too pleased. I heard him whisper I had a head like an overripe crunch on melon.
I love that he thumped her head like a melon.
Well,
I saw you lying there with your back exposed, waiting for a little hummer.
George, you whore. So here's our first glimpse at newcomer sex. It involves humming for some reason. Also, the back of a woman's knee is an erogenous zone. George starts laughing because he remembers the human porn they rented.
Do you remember how funny some of their foreplay rituals seemed?
You know what they say. Any sweet protein.
Now that's a cut. The next day, Matt and George come across the laundryman that Burns saw at the morgue.
Hey, hold it! Hey, stop, damn it!
Woo, nice jump. Matt made it too, but not as gracefully. George is clearly the smart one here.
You're supposed to back me up.
I did. Anticipated his exit. He's in custody.
What if I needed you inside?
Well, I would have come right in.
It turns out that a newcomer paid him and another guy to steal the corpse.
What did he want with it?
I don't know.
But it turns out that he's not the one who hit Burns.
Well, he's right-handed. The angle of the blow on Mr. Burns most probably came from a left hand.
Yes, it was a slag that hit him, man.
Where is the body?
Come on. If I tell you guys gonna give me a break?
Oh, yeah, sure. And if you don't, I'm gonna take you up and I'm gonna throw you off the roof!
No, Matt, no, please.
No, he's done!
No, I covered for you the last time.
Now they're really doing the good cop, bad cop thing. Meanwhile, Emily is in class, sitting across from that girl we've seen before. Oh, I love that top. It's so 80s. Anyway, Emily helps her out with a math problem.
Gee, thanks. Yeah, those sponge heads and your hair will fall out. Shut up, Mark. He's a drunk. Thanks for the help. Sure.
Now they're both very aware of the fact that Emily doesn't have hair.
You're a funny guy, George.
Do you really think so? I've been trying to improve my sense of humor.
Later, George tries to tell a joke.
A man came up to me and asked, "Which way is it to Carnegie Hall?" And I said, "Practice."
Oh my God, he's such a dork.
It might be a smidge more effective if you said, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? How do you get to Carnegie? That's it. Keep working it.
I love that bit. They're so damn cute. I love this billboard for White Gold brand sour milk. It's shown a lot on this show. Anyway, Matt asks Puente about that warehouse.
Abandoned for about a year. Why?
Just curious.
And they come across something kind of gross.
Looks like skin.
Huh? Human skin?
No. Skin from one of us.
Later, these three guys are all bragging and laughing about how they threw salt water onto a newcomer. It burns them like acid, as shown in the movie. And they spot Kathy getting out of her car on the way home.
Not supposed to be no slacks around here.
Excuse me.
Ain't no excuse for you. Pretty fancy clothes for a slag.
Don't you touch me!
Ew, I don't like where this is going. She fights them off pretty well, though.
Slack bitch!
But luckily, Matt is just around the corner. And he has all of them arrested. Good riddance.
When'd you turn into slack lover, Sykes?
There are two possibilities as to why Matt would be offended by that, and it's hard to tell which one it is. Again, he's complicated. Anyway, he takes her home.
Down at the medical center where I work, everyone is treated with respect. Human or newcomer, it doesn't matter. You're valued for what's in your head, not the shape of it.
Poor Kathy, but I guess it's nice to know that some places are friendly towards newcomers. So she goes to change her clothes and Matt ends up telling her how he ended up a cop, which is kind of interesting.
Spent so much time in jail as a kid, seemed like home. This one old cop got so tired of busting me, got me into the police athletic league.
As he secretly watches her undress. Yeah, it's kind of sleazy, but you can't blame him for being curious. Actually, in the movie, he watched the newcomer dancer undress as well, and it was shot very similarly.
Been divorced long?
About a year. We got married too young. Had our daughter 20 minutes later.
We actually learn a lot about Matt in this little scene.
God, no dead beavers.
No, I'm an herbivore, a vegetarian.
With good ears.
This is interesting. He stumbles onto an object and asks her about it.
You'd call it something like a focal point. It's part of my religion.
Well, like Andarko and Saline?
No, mine's different. You'd say it's more Eastern, internal.
Kathy is kind of a newcomer Buddhist.
You mean you all have different religions? Oh, of course, why not? Good, Sykes.
While he's there, Matt asks if she ever noticed a distinctive smell on the ship.
Well, I did notice that the air was different once we got off the ship, but I think that was just the smog.
You know what's always been the most curious to me? I mean, here's this ship with over 250,000 slaves, right? And it never gets to where it's supposed to.
I don't actually remember if the show follows up on that or not, but it's an interesting thing to think about.
And aren't they ever going to come looking?
The newcomer slaves were obviously being shipped somewhere.
Maybe they will.
And I'm gonna stop there for now because I'm only a little over halfway through and these videos are not supposed to get this long. I'd tell you to go watch the Alien Nation pilot before watching part 2, but I'm honestly not sure how you'd find it. I do obviously recommend it for whatever it's worth. Good luck if you want to try. See you next time.
Not so